The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
On Politics Now, the race for governor. We dig into the highlights of the Republican primary debate held here on Channel 8 this week. Plus,
small businesses have been really impacted during the pandemic.
A closer look at the lieutenant governor's race, what the office does, and the current lieutenant governor's hopes for keeping her job. Plus, the debate in Washington, D.C., how to stop mass shootings, efforts by lawmakers to try and restrict gun sales.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Thank you for joining us here on Politics Now. I'm John Langler. This week, 8 News Now hosted the state's only televised Republican gubernatorial debate featuring the top 5 candidates. Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo and Attorney Joey Gilbert are the frontrunners. Former Senator Dean Heller and North Las Vegas Mayor John Lee were sort of on a second tier. Venture capitalist Guy Nora is in 5th place in recent polling. Out of the gate, moderators asked the candidates to address school safety after this week's deadly school shooting in Texas.
What would you do to protect children and staff in schools from mass shootings like this one?
Mental health services. We are lacking the commonality on most of these tragic shootings, these mass shootings, is the nexus being mental health and the lack of resources to address the individuals.
The mental health issue in the state of Nevada, we're last in the nation for mental health. Resources for children, teenagers, and adults are lacking. In Las Vegas, where we have 2 mental health facilities, are overstaffed and don't have enough resources. We need to do a better job there. I would fully fund public safety. We have the money. We're just not using it properly. So I would use the people's money to secure our most prized asset, our children.
You take a look at the Washington Post. Washington Post did a story this week on the Clark County School District down here and how dangerous it is. And the teachers are the ones that are being targeted now with clubs, with knives, with sexual assault, even students raping teachers. This has to change. It's time to break up this school district.
I think we need to include also, when we talk about mental health, more parent involvement in what's going on at our schools. And I also believe we need to break up the school district.
I want to start something called the Battle-Born Marshals. And Battle-Born Marshals are going to report to the Department of Safety, and they're going to go out to the 664 schools. And they're going to be marshals the same way we have them on our airlines. And that's how we're going to define them from these lunatics that go in and prey on children.
Now, Sheriff Lombardo leads the polling right now. He is endorsed by former President Donald Trump, and that made him a target for the other candidates. They attacked him on immigration and ending Metro Police's cooperation program with federal immigration officials, that following a federal court ruling. Gilbert, Heller, and Lee call him Sanctuary Joe.
Would you activate and send Nevada National Guard troops to the southern border?
First off, that's a very good question. Every 15 days, 275,000 people are coming across the border into our country. That's as big as North Las Vegas is, just so you can get an understanding of what we're creating. We don't have the services. We don't have the schools. We don't have the health care to take care of all these people. I would put my National Guard people at risk of the state issues to send them down to the border to see what we could do to slow down what's going on with that migrant train.
No. There's a finite amount of money. I was actually a military officer in the Nevada National Guard, and there's a finite amount of money associated with the deployment of your local state guard. And I am the only one standing up here at this podium that has removed anybody who has committed crimes associated with and being undocumented illegal.
Absolutely, without a doubt, I would deploy the troops. But unfortunately, Sheriff Lombardo, we refer to him among us as Sanctuary Joe for a reason. The Department of Justice Inspector General's report 2016 had Clark County as one of the worst sanctuary counties in the nation.
I would, but let's be clear. Joe's not telling the truth here. What happened was he made Southern Nevada a sanctuary city. If you want to live in a dangerous neighborhood, live in a sanctuary city, and that's what this guy cost. You don't have to have the legislature deem us a sanctuary city.
Well, candidates wrapped up with Heller attacking Lombardo, and Lombardo declared the primary already over.
I stand in front of you today, a successful businessman who's lived the American dream. And I'm running for governor so that each and everyone in Nevada has the opportunity to live the American dream.
I think good government is the way to handle these things and not poor business practices, and that's what our city of North Las Vegas is doing. I can fix Nevada.
What Nevada needs is a proven conservative. I've spent a career cutting taxes, reducing the size of government, and looking for relief for Nevadans' hardworking families. What are we going to get in November? Do you want a proven conservative?
I've proven the past 27 months that I've been fighting for Nevadans on my own time and my own dime. I got the churches open, I got early treatment medication, the masks off the children.
This primary is over. There's nothing more to argue about. I've weathered 12 months of attacks from Steve Sisolak and his PACs, and from most of the individuals standing here next to me. So we need to come together.
Early voting is underway now in the June primary election. Mail-in ballots, they're already arrived. You may have gotten yours already. Early voting runs until June 10th. Primary day is June 14th. You can vote at any early voting location. You can also send in your mail-in ballot. You can also drop it off at any of the locations around Clark County. Nevada does offer same-day registration. You can register at one of those sites as well, or you can do it online. This week, Clark County election officials gave us a look inside where all your votes are being counted. If you drop off a mail ballot, you do have to sign a form saying you're not going to vote twice. That's not allowed, of course. Clark County Registrar of Voters Joe Gloria tried to assure any skeptical voters.
I think what's important for us is to demonstrate to all voters that there's integrity in our process. If anybody's concerned about elections, we ask you to go to the source.
And if you have other questions, Gloria encourages you to check out the Nevada Secretary of State's website for information. One of the most competitive races on really both sides of the political aisle is the lieutenant governor's race. On the Republican side, Las Vegas City Councilman Stavros Anthony, former state treasurer Dan Schwartz, and businessmen John Miller and Mac Miller are the frontrunners of a 7-candidate field. On the Democratic side, current Lieutenant Governor Lisa Cano Burkhead, well, she's a former teacher. She's already in the position. She hasn't been there very long, though. Cano Burkhead was appointed by Governor Sisolak back in December. Challenging her is Henderson Mayor Deborah March and head of the Nevada Democratic Rural Caucus, Kimmy Cole. Governor Sisolak has endorsed his appointment, Cano Burkhead, and this week he sent out some flyers to support her as well. Cano Burkhead was a principal. She was an educator in the Clark County School District for close to 3 decades. I spoke with her about what she's accomplished and the work she says she has left. Let's talk about your accomplishments, what you've been able to achieve in your time as Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. I'm really proud of the work that we've done around the Office of Small Business Advocacy, which just launched in February. And the work and the idea behind that is really to be a one-stop shop for our small business owners in removing the barriers that sometimes hinder the success of our small business owners. And so we have been able to connect with our small business owners, kind of direct them to some grant opportunities that really help them to open their doors. We know that our small businesses have been really impacted during the pandemic.
Another sort of key component of the Lieutenant Governor's position is the Office of Tourism.
Yes.
Obviously, Las Vegas and Nevada in general have a lot of tourists.
Yes.
What would you like to do moving forward if you're, again, retained as Lieutenant Governor to enhance Travel Nevada, to try and get the word out more, maybe not just about Las Vegas, but other parts of the state?
We've already been doing that. So I've been working with Travel Nevada around, because I do chair the outdoor recreation space, and so really working to in-state encourage Nevadans to discover Nevada and all of what I call the gems that we have in our outdoor spaces in Nevada, but also to invite our Latin American and our Asian markets to our state, to Las Vegas, but also to explore and to discover Nevada. So that's already happening. I've been working with Travel Nevada. I've been working alongside some influencers in Mexico around this idea of coming out. I've recorded videos in Spanish and sent them to our Latin American countries to encourage them to come and to discover the great spaces that we have outdoors in our state.
Your background is in education,
Yes.
25 years I believe it is with Clark County
Yes.
School District and elsewhere. Mental health is such a big component of what's going on in our schools. We know that the classes just wrapped up this week. What would you be able to do, what you'd like to do up in Carson City in the Lieutenant Governor's office to try and get more resources, or what can be done to get more resources into the classroom?
Yeah, we've already started with roundtable sessions that we've had alongside our state superintendent, with our stakeholders, with parents, with our educators, really talking about the crisis that we're having and how we can then take that feedback of their real experiences, the parents, the educators, to have those conversations at a state level so that we can be really targeted in our approach, right? Be very strategic with our funding, making sure that we are spending money in ways that really impact students. I have always said that when our adults on campus are okay, then our kids are okay. And right now, our adults on campus are not okay. And so we need to take that into consideration. We need to make sure that we are, all of the adults, all of the talent in our state around the table having these crucial conversations. We're in a crisis in education. We're losing teachers. We already have vacancies that we can't fill. And so we need to make sure that we are addressing the issues at hand.
Our full interview with the Lieutenant Governor is available on 8newsnow.com. We should point out we have reached out to Henderson Mayor Deborah March, who is the other Democratic frontrunner running in for this position. She has not gotten back to us. The main jobs for Lieutenant Governor are economic development and tourism. They would also take over for the governor if he or she cannot do their job for whatever reason. They preside over the state Senate and cast a deciding vote whenever there might be a tie. The debate over how to stop mass shootings. Next on Politics Now, the divide between Democrats and Republicans in Congress after the tragedy in Texas this week.
Go to shophottubs.com.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Outrage and grief after this week's mass shooting at a Texas elementary school. In Washington, D.C., Democrats are renewing calls for gun control measures. Republicans are offering other solutions. 19 children were killed in the attack. 2 adults, teachers, were also killed. It's the deadliest school shooting in the U.S. since Sandy Hook. For years, Democrats have pushed for measures like universal background checks and renewing the federal assault weapons ban. Republicans say such restrictions don't work. Instead, they're pushing for more armed law enforcement on campuses.
Why do you go through all the hassle of getting this job if your answer is that as this slaughter increases, as our kids run for their lives, we do nothing?
There's generally a mental illness factor to it.
Texas has sparked a lot of movement in Washington, D.C. Alex Limon joining us now from Washington to talk about where things stand right now on Capitol Hill. Alex, the Democrats are proposing more new gun legislation. What are they trying to do legislatively to react to what took place in Texas?
Hey, John, that's right. We really have seen a strong concerted effort from Democrats to try to get some new gun safety laws on the books. In fact, earlier in the week, President Joe Biden said in a tweet that, when the federal assault weapon ban was in effect, mass shootings decreased. And when that assault weapon ban expired, mass shootings tripled in this country. And so if Democrats want things to change, they say you need to get some new gun safety laws on the books. One of the things they have been pushing for example, is renewing that federal assault weapon ban, but that's not the only thing. They say also things like banning high-capacity magazine clips, things like, magazines that can hold 50 or more bullets at a time. We, of course, have heard, pushback from Republicans who, at least so far, don't seem like they are on board for supporting these measures. They say that they don't want to infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens because they don't believe that will make a difference in stemming the mass shootings that really you only see happen time and time again in this country. And,
we had our own mass shooting here in Las Vegas, and even after that, there was legislative talk in Capitol Hill, and they sometimes go places, sometimes they don't. Republicans don't seem too keen on what the Democrats are suggesting now, so what is the GOP proposing?
Yeah, Republicans have their own ideas. Like I said, they said one focus should be the issue of mental health, though they're still exploring that idea. I haven't, particularly heard them mention any concrete ways of how you deal with that when it comes to linking it and stemming the gun violence that we see. Another thing, or several other things they have proposed, though, is this idea of hardening schools, and so implementing measures like bulletproof doors and windows or systems that can alert people about mass shootings.
We should point out Nevada requires a background check on private party to private party sales of guns. That ballot initiative on this passed by 1 percentage point back in 2018. Lawmakers tweaked it so the state, not the FBI, runs the background checks. Then it kicked in in January of 2020. We also have a red flag law that allows a court order seizing firearms to do that for up to a year. Next on Politics Now, affordable housing for the military. We'll speak with Senator Jackie Rosen. She tells us what's being done to help military families handle rising housing costs. And drawing back international visitors, what the Homeland Security Committee came up with during a meeting in Las Vegas this week.
watching Politics Now.
Military life is a challenge. There are deployments to different bases. The act of moving is a challenge of its own, and it's expensive. Now, the military pays for transitions, but that money used to only arrive after the fact. Now, Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen is working on getting that money to servicemen and women faster. I spoke with her about that issue and the effort to make Nevada first in the next presidential primary.
One thing they kept saying over and over was that transition money that they need when they live on base to moving off base, they weren't getting it till months after they moved. Now, of course, in 2020, we allocated this money, but I'm sure any viewer out there, everybody has moved. We know how expensive it is. We know you have first month rent, security deposit, moving expenses. So these young servicemen and women weren't getting it ahead of time, causing them to have to ask friends or family to borrow the money, making it very stressful for them to move. So, of course, through committee hearings, through letters, through talking to the secretaries of all the services, not just the Air Force, the Pentagon, Department of Defense, indicated to us, or they told everyone about a week ago, that they heard what we said, they took it into account, they're changing the policy, the money's already allocated, costs nothing. They'll be able to get the money before they move. It's a great change. We should see the date. They've notified all the services, so now we're just waiting to see the actual date of implementation. It should be fairly quickly.
It seems unusual that if the money was already allocated, was it just that the policy was we'll give it, you send us the invoice and we'll give you the money versus the other way around?
You already had to go do it. You had to send the invoice. Instead of saying, I'm signing a lease, here's the lease I'm signing while you're doing it, so you could have the money given to you right at that time.
I remember reading a GAO report from a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, and they were talking about that at Creech. There's very little places to live up in Indian Springs. Are there any efforts, as you were saying, talking to the folks up at Creech, of trying to address that? The city of Las Vegas wants to build more homes in the Northwest Valley. That's still a long drive up to Indian Springs. Are there any efforts being undertaken in Washington to do something about that?
Well, we've been talking actually locally. I think that Creech has been talking with the city of Las Vegas, the Clark County, to try to work on a plan to develop affordable housing units right up around Creech. And of course, my job in the federal government is to make sure that we have funding for military construction. And so whether that's adjacent to the base or on the base, for Creech, it might have to be adjacent because of the size and the location. On Nellis, we do have the space. There's some barracks that just need to be upgraded, and there's other things we need to build.
Primary season in Nevada is only a couple of weeks away. You're involved in trying to get Nevada to be first in the presidential primary for 2024. There's an important deadline on the horizon. Where do things stand with the application? Is it just sort of a waiting game now?
Well, it's been a team effort. We have submitted the application for Nevada and done all of our advocating. I can tell you that I think Nevada, of course, we know our motto, battle born, but we're battleground, and the road to the presidency, regardless of party, runs straight through Nevada. And we really look like the rest of the country in our ethnic diversity, in our energy. We have wind, water, solar, geothermal. We have a 30% Hispanic population, about 10% African American. We're fastest growing AAPI, one of the fastest growing in the nation. We're union strong. We have so much going on in Nevada that I think we would be at the best place to have first in the nation. We'll see what they decide coming up. Their decision will be sometime next month, and we'll just look forward to hearing what that is.
A final decision on which states will enter the early window for the presidential primary that's expected to come at the Democratic National Committee meeting, which is scheduled for July 8th and 9th. International travel still has not caught back up to its pre-pandemic pace. This week, Congress's Homeland Security Committee was here in Las Vegas, figuring out how to make travelers feel more comfortable. The members met over at Harry Reid International Airport in a meeting that was hosted by Nevada Democratic Congresswoman Dina Titus. She says some travelers are staying away because they're confused about international rules on coronavirus vaccines and masking.
All of those things are good tools in the toolbox, but we need to get the message out, especially internationally. This is what you have to do to come.
New technologies like biometric screenings have really helped airports decrease those wait times. But the head of TSA and Border Patrol for Nevada say They're also experiencing staffing shortages. Turnover is as high as 25% in those agencies. More politics now.
Only at your Las Vegas area Hyundai dealer.
In what to watch, early voting and mail-in ballots. Now, in past elections, as many as 2/3 of Nevadans have voted before the actual election day. So we're going to watch and see if those trends hold firm and whether any problems might pop up with mail-in ballots this primary election. Making our case, in a little more than a month, Nevada might be declared the first state to nominate a Democratic presidential candidate in 2024. Just heard from Senator Jackie Rosen on that issue. So we're staying on top of that as well, and when something develops, we will certainly let you know. We thank you so much for watching us here on Politics Now. Don't forget all the latest political news at 8newsnow.com. It's all there for you. We're back with you next Saturday. Thank you very much for watching.